Captains come about? I was idly thinking of an idea. Like Captain, I could go talk to Captains. I'm doing a talk show on television at the moment, and I'm sort of intrigued by talking to people. And so I began to put together the concept of the idea, reaching out to these two gentlemen and the others to see if they would accept my presence. The epiphany was my realization after talking to everybody was that I held a defensive attitude to defend myself against what I thought to be derision by people who would say, beam me up, Scott. Or, oh, this Star Trek, and start laughing. I don't know why you laugh. And I began to understand what my attitude had become. You know, something that has been occurring to me for quite some time now, and I'd love to hear the other two gentlemen discourse on some of these questions, is that creative ideas themselves, are very rare. And although we think, oh, someone must have thought of that, somebody in all likelihood hasn't thought of that. That a creative thought and a creative act is a rare one. And we need to know that you're thinking something, whether you're making a dish for someone you love or taking a walk and observe, whatever it is, as simple as it might be, is a creative act, and that's rare.
It's really a conversation. I mean, over the years, then I decided, even as a young man, that I'm not interested in talking at people but talking with them. So that, in Mr. Shatner's case, that he wants to have a conversation. So it could go in any direction. And that is what is appealing about it. I mean, an interview, in some sense, unless the person is extraordinary, gifted in asking real questions, at least in my experience, becomes really uninteresting. Where did you go? Where did you sit down? What did you do? You turn left, you turn right. If you want to talk about something which is really about the world, which is a way to investigate or explore another human being, then that's fascinating to me. And thereby, this conversation with Bill Shatner.
You see, Avery is a teacher, and he uses words, but he's also a musician. And somehow, I'm not quite sure how, but it was a creative act on both our parts. He sits at the piano, and the interview, the conversation, is through music. And it was strange and unique.
What was remarkable about this piece is that, I was talking to Bill about this morning, he put his ego aside. Because a lot of times you do interviews with people and they have an ego. They want to be the funniest guy in the conversation, or they want to be the smartest guy, or whatever. And because he approached it ego-free, which is very unique and rare for an actor, he wasn't trying to be the star of this. He just was doing the interviews, and through that come these very interesting interviews that I think are interesting anyway. And he becomes the star because he's not trying, which is a great lesson for all of us. His epiphany is a remarkable moment that wasn't scripted.
No, I had no idea. There had been a pilot made with an actor called Jeffrey Hunter, who was quite popular at the time. And NBC didn't like the pilot. And Gene Roddenberry called me and asked me to come and look at the pilot. Would I be in it? And I saw the promise that NBC saw because they wanted to make another pilot. So I agreed to come aboard and make certain changes. And it became halfway popular in the 3 years that I was on. No, it was barely on every year. And then half a dozen years goes by, and suddenly it becomes something else.
I had some sense of Star Trek before, of course. anybody growing up with television did. But I never imagined that I would be asked to be a part of it, let alone then command it, you know. And actually I laughed when they first talked to me about it because I assumed that they were going to ask me to put on prosthetic makeup, to which I said absolutely not. But when I read the pilot, and I was moved by the subject matter, and the fact that I was going to be able to be, at least in terms of some small image, a projection of humankind still whole some 400 years hence, and be brown and male.
Because it was originally pitched, we want you to be the next captain. And I, in my head, said, not interested, because I did not want to follow all of these guys and didn't feel like I had done much there. And only when they said, you're going to proceed, so I didn't have to follow these guys, then the chicken and me ran away, and I said, well, I can do that because I can't do anything wrong. I can't screw it up because I'm first. So for me, that was really the hook that worked best for me, because being a huge fan of the franchise, I just, like Avery, I never dreamed that I'd be asked to be a part of it, but to follow it, I don't think I had those kind of guts to do that. So I happily was first.
I think it's a layered question. I think that on the surface, when the stories were well told, it was a good story, a good anecdote, a swell tale that you could stand by the water cooler and say, "Did you see the show last night?" Now that's on one level, and then there's the family, and I think that may be the real point of Star Trek. The family of players in each of our iterations. The characters' interaction and the fact that they cared for each other, and the fact that we were in this lonely environment and all we had was each other, I think resonated. And then there was the philosophy and things like that. What did you think?
Yeah, well, it's all of the above. So, I mean, I could easily stop there, what Bill has said. I think this idea of the multi-layered of it is really important. In as much as we can talk about imagination in an ancient and modern way simultaneously. And imagination being one of the most powerful tools we've been given as human beings. Certainly that, in part, Star Trek reflects our capacity to imagine. Not exclusively, but it is at once provocative, and I dare say, and as I've often said, it is the people who hold the connection. If you don't turn it on, then it doesn't last for 44 years and counting. And I think, across the globe, that is really, really one of the kinetic things about it, is that the people believe.
With regard to
No. I have to deal with you after this press conference.
I'll just, everything they're saying, I agree with 100%. I'll just say what attracted me to it originally, and I said this before already today, but the reason we're all here is this man that's sitting here, and his group of players created this mythology that has captured all of us. But what got me sitting in St. Louis when I started watching the show was St. Louis is a pretty white town. It certainly was where I was growing up in my day. And what the show represented, the way that everyone treated everybody equally, without question about it, they dealt with their emotional differences, but no other differences, no color, no any, none of that existed. It blew all of that stuff away in the 60s in this country. And if you got on board with that, I mean, that to me was the ride. How they did it, how they loved each other, how they cared for each other. But if you got on board with that premise, that none of that matters. And we're going to reach out because the writers imagined it, and we can hold that in our own bodies as possibility, that that's the future. And if that's a future you want to be a part of, then here we are. That's why I turned it on. That's why I kept watching.
And there's one more thing, and that is that the premise is 200, 300, 400 years from now, and that means we still are alive on the planet. The chances of that happening become fewer and fewer as time goes on, that mankind will last that length of time. But Star Trek suggests that we will find a way out of the mess we're in.
I can't imagine that the Star Trek franchise would be going anywhere for a long time. The film last summer was so wildly successful, rightfully so. They're young. They've got a lot of adventures. There's a lot of space out there. I see, and there's a huge passion for it around the planet. So I don't see that going away because there's a pureness to the franchise that can be reinvented and carried on. So I don't see it. I don't see it going anywhere soon at all.
I think, as I was alluding to before, I don't know why it would change. I don't know why it would go anywhere. Where would it go? I mean, the things that we know from the inception of Star Trek often duplicated, not ever the same. That's what we know. I'm not talking about good or bad. I'm talking about that's so. So where would it go? I don't think it's going to go anywhere in that sense. 44 years and counting. And what we also know, in television and film, if somebody does one thing one time, they're going to do it again. You think about the number of things that we've seen. How many times are we going to see Leave It to Beaver? I bet we see it again. Not anything against it, that's the point. One pair of glasses is funny, two is funnier.
This epiphany, this realization, what I had been a part of doing, and what I wanted to change was part and parcel of the thing. The humanity of everybody I talked to, the palpable texture of their personalities, just touched me. I think of these two guys, whom in terms of hours, I know very little, of whom I know very little. I feel they're friends of mine because our souls touched, and there's no place in the world that we would go, and if we saw each other, we would sit down and there would be instant communication between us because we had this depth between us. So that was illuminating.
Me? I had never met Bill before until that moment. So when you see this film, the moment that we meet is the first time we've ever spoken. So that whole day was an epiphany for me just because he's been such an idol of mine for so many years, and I kept missing him in places to meet him. So to find out firsthand what a great guy he is and how he feels, I mean, we ride horses, his dogs are there, his wife's there, you just get this great sense. I got the joy of discovering him personally and getting to know him. But on top of that, hearing the other guys talk is the epiphany for me, because I found out stuff about all these guys that I didn't know, and Kate, I shouldn't say just the guys, that it was all very kind of, and how he ties it together is very interesting. But it was really revealing for me to learn about all of these different folks, wonderful actors that I'd only seen but didn't really know.
Excuse me. It's very moving to me. I mean the film, and why? Very rarely do people really want to know what you feel, People say it all the time, hello, how are you? It's not a real question most of the time. And so somebody who is willing to keep prodding until they get an answer, prodding in not any particular way, or any particular direction, but you seeking an answer, that was the most moving thing for me. And it's revealing. I cannot speak for Scott or Kate or Patrick, except looking at the film over and over and over again, as I was a part of the post-production and dealing with the music. And so I was convinced, the more I look at it, even as I look at it again, it's very moving because there is someone we know in the world who really wants to know.
Thank you very, very, very much.